Hey everyone, this is Sarah, and today we are going to be doing watercolor. So I've got my supplies. I always go over my supplies first when I start off. First, I wanted to say that if you don't have, these are the supplies that I recommend, but if you don't have those, I have this is like a Crayola art set, and let's see, I don't have the brush that came with it, but you can use this, and I will, when I talk about the different colors, I can tell you these are just the primary colors. So if you have something that has similar colors in it, then that will be fine. But I do recommend using the liquid watercolors, the tube watercolors. Okay, so first let's talk about the paint, since I already brought that up. I've got 5 colors: burnt umber, cadmium yellow pale. I've got 2 different blues, a phthalo blue and an ultramarine blue. Now I'm using Grumbacher Academy paints, and those have they've got proprietary names for some of their stuff. So the phthalo blue, I guess they've trademarked that. It's phthalocyanine. I think that's it. Phthalocyanine. Anyway, it's phthalo blue, and you'll see that if you use any other brands, they'll have something very similar. It's basically kind of a light, like it's a warm blue, like maybe, I'm trying to think, cobalt maybe could fall into that. Anyway, you need a warm blue, but phthalo blue. And then there's phthalo crimson, which you could also use alizarin crimson or a naphthol red. Basically though, what you've got is a red, a yellow, 2 blues, a warm and a cool, which you can mix if you don't have, and a brown. So those are the colors that you need generally. Therefore, a set like this is fine. What I've got here is I've got a cool blue. If you mix the cool blue and like a little bit of purple, you get an even cooler blue. If you mix the brown in with that, you get a black, but of course this has a black in it. I don't like using pure black though, and I don't think that there's going to be any of that in this painting today anyway. Let's see, there's already a pre-mixed orange, but we'll probably use, if you were going to use the red, the yellow, the blue, and then what we'd probably do is just mix a tiny bit of green in to make the warmer blue, and then your yellow. All right, I also have a pencil and an eraser, and that is because we will be lightly sketching in our shapes first. Watercolor is, it's an art of planning. I've got 2 brushes. I've got a wash brush, and this is a 3/4 inch wash brush. I'm also using a Grumbacher brush. However, you could also get a size 10 or 12 filbert. Filbert is a flat brush that's rounded at the top. And that would work fine. I have a size 6 round brush. You could also use a size 4 or 8, and that would be okay. All right, I have a palette, and I just realized I don't have my palette knife, so I'm going to have to go grab that. If you guys notice, I already have some paints in my palette, and this is from the last watercolor class I did. You can reconstitute watercolor just with water, so it's not necessary to wash out your watercolor. In fact, it's a great way to save money, save supplies by just letting it dry, whatever your colors are, letting them dry, and then re-wetting it with water. Speaking of water, I do have a cup of water. I have some paper towels. I have watercolor paper, and I just use 9 by 12. I happen to use a 140-pound cold press. Let's see, I'll show you. Oops, that's 140-pound. You can see right there, barely. Sorry, guys. Okay, and then let's see. Let me get a piece of paper out of this. Let me grab a palette knife because you need something to mix your paints with. I'll be right back. right, so I've got a palette knife here, and I'm using just a straight flat palette knife. You can even use a plastic knife, you know, that you get in like a little package or from the Dollar Tree. That would work fine too. So a lot of times with watercolors, I end up mixing with my brush, so I don't always use a knife. All right, so that's it for the supplies. If you notice right here on my screen, I've got my link to my Discord server, and if you go out to that channel, the Art Share channel, everyone is invited. You can access that. I post the reference photos, so you can go out, join. You can see what today's photo is going to be, so you have an idea. But we are painting strawberries, and so many of you, I'm sure, already know what a strawberry looks like generally in your head. So it's not absolutely necessary to look at a reference photo, but if you want to see what I'm going off of today, then there you go. I have my tea. It's an Earl Grey cranberry mixture of my own design. And then that's it. Let's go ahead and get started. First things first, when you're using watercolor paper, feel the paper. There's one side that's going to be smooth and one side that's going to be rough. We're using the rough side. And that's important because that catches the paint. All right, so first we're going to sketch our strawberries. Now you can decide how many strawberries you'd like to do. I'm just going to do, actually I'll go ahead and do all 6 of the ones on the reference photo, but you can do more if you want to. This is especially good for practice. Now, on Tuesday, when I did the drawing, hey, Nopester 101, welcome to the stream. Thank you for joining. When on Tuesday, when in my drawing class, we studied a still life, and that's why I'm doing the strawberries today, because I wanted to do a still life showing you what it's like to paint a still life, because we learned what it's like to draw a still life. The important thing about still life is it's easy access, so you can set any items up and create your own still life. And those items generally, unless somebody lives with you and moves things, you know, that it's going to stay in the same place, so you can always come right back to the angle you were at. But the other thing about a still life is it can really help you develop your skills of proportions and perspective. So giving things, basically applying design elements so that your image, whatever it is, looks 3D. And I'm going to talk about those today as we go through. So let's go ahead and draw the shape of our strawberries. I'm drawing very light, and I'm just drawing general strawberry shapes. I'm going to hold this up so you see. I'm not being any particular way about it. Probably about the middle of my page, you can see. I'm not, again, it really doesn't matter. You could do it up here, doesn't matter. Today is just a still life. This strawberry is going to be a little bigger. This one might be a little smaller and maybe kind of angled to the side. So just hold that up so you can see. Just strawberry shapes. Oh, and you know what? I'm going to use my eraser because I realized I didn't leave enough area for my leaves. No pun intended. So I'm going to draw my second set of strawberries lower. Excuse me. Okay, so this guy is really misshapen. I'm going to hold this up so everybody can see. All right. Now we're going to loosely draw in leaf shapes. again, I'm just going to point this out. I'm very, very loosely drawing these shapes. It's not, you know, you don't have to even know exactly what a leaf looks like. Strawberry leaf, that is. I'm sure you know what a leaf looks like. You can overlap if you need to. Some of these will overlap the strawberry. Now, one of the reasons that we draw first in watercolor that you wouldn't normally do with acrylic paint is because watercolor is additive, meaning that you have to work light to dark. You cannot remove color. You can only add color. So we sketch in our shapes so that we know where we want everything to go and we don't make any mistakes later. That we have a general idea of where we want everything. And when I'm done drawing, I'm going to hold this up so you guys can see, because I have been doing this for many years, so I'm very practiced at drawing quickly, but I've been given feedback from some of my viewers that sometimes I move a little fast, so I'm going to slow down and let you guys catch up. This is actually probably going to be a relatively short class today because the study of a watercolor still life, and this is one of the reasons I really love watercolor, it's pretty quick. Watercolor is already a relatively quick medium because, I mean, you're just trying to get an impression of something. You're not being exact. Not usually. Now, there are artists out there, such as like Marcos Beccari. I've mentioned him before. I highly recommend you check out his Instagram. Marcos Beccari, Beccari. He's a Brazilian watercolor artist. Really fantastic, and his stuff is very precise. So I'm sure that it takes him a little longer to do some of his stuff. But for the most part, most of the watercolor that I teach in this class is pretty quick. You know, we're just getting general idea of colors and shapes. Very much like Bob Ross, where, I mean, he did some precision, but for the most part, it was just colors and shapes that just happened to look like, you know, trees and clouds and a little house in the woods and a stream and mountains, and, you know, the list goes on and on. So I'm just holding this up so you guys can see what I've drawn and, you know, get my general shapes. I'm giving you some time to finish your drawing. Oops, excuse me. All right. I'm going to take a little sip of tea while I'm waiting. I really like this combination. I'm going to have to try this again. I like to experiment with tea and kind of, I do the same with coffee. I make my own blends. I'm not like a huge coffee drinker, but I love tea. All right, so you guys should have some general leaves. If you don't, it's okay. You can always come in later. But now we're going to actually start to apply color. So we can, don't worry about the pencil anymore. First things first, we're going to be using entirely our small brush today because the large brush is mostly for washes, which is when you're doing a very large area. So I'm going to wet my brush. And as I've told you guys in previous classes, the best way to wet your brush is push it down on the bottom and see how I'm spreading it out like that? Just very slowly go back and forth, almost like you're painting the bottom of the cup. And that's a good way to get water in there. Now I'm going to keep the water on my brush. I'm not going to wipe it off. And I'm going to let it drip down into my yellow because I already have some yellow here. Now, if you're using the wells, the pre-formed wells, you can just do the same thing because that's basically what you've got is dried yellow. I'm going to get a little bit more water and I just tap it rather than wipe. And see? It's reconstituting. I love it. Okay. So remember how I mentioned that watercolor is additive? Well, we're going to want some of our areas of our strawberry to be orange. And what colors make orange? Red and yellow. So we're going to start with yellow. Always start with your lightest color first and then work darker. We're going to actually lay down all of the areas that are going to be either green or yellow. Similar with the green, that's a mixture of yellow and blue. And so we're going to put our yellow down first and we'll add our blue in later. We're actually going to add a green in later. We'll mix that. If you do not already have color down, grab your yellow and just put a very little bit. You don't need much. And just add water to the side. You do not have to touch the paint directly. You add the water to the side and just kind of move your brush back and forth to agitate the water. And that will pick up the color from the paint. Okay, so let's go ahead and paint our leaves. All of them can be yellow because they're all going to be green. We are not going to paint our entire strawberry yellow, however, because some of it will be more of a pinker color rather than an oranger color. So I'm going to paint the strawberries last. I'm going to go ahead and do the leaves first. And this is why we drew in our shapes. If you go outside of your lines, that's okay. In fact, I just did. Just went outside my lines a little bit. Watercolor is meant to be very fluid, quite literally, right? Because it's just water and paint. And you, and the universe. I always call watercolor my collaboration with the universe because you don't know what you're going to get. So we're finishing up painting the leaves. Last one. And I just keep picking up more color on my brush from the watery substance. If for some reason it stops being watery, it stops being like a soupy mix, then just add a little bit more water to your paint. You don't want to put straight paint directly on here because watercolor, it's concentrated when it comes out of the tube. So you want to keep it a lighter color. So I'm going to hold this up so you can see. I'll just paint it in the yellow. All right, now we're going to add in the orange part. So I'm adding a little bit more water to my yellow. It's even hard to see because it's so light. Making it soupy. Yep, Nobster, it does look like you're the only one on. That's okay. I appreciate it, and I'm sure people might go back and watch the videos on demand. So, all right. So I'm going to just paint the left side of each of the strawberries. That's where the orange is going to be. That's where our highlight is. And then I'm slightly curving around at the top and bottom of the strawberry. So I'm going to hold this up so you can see what that looks like. It's like really like the shape of the letter C. Can you see that C? All right, I'm going to fill in the left side of the C just a little bit more. So it's a thick C. Now we're going to do sort of that same thing. It won't be exact, but we're going to do something similar with all of them. So with this one, it's just going to be at the top, and it'll come down the side a little bit, but more like a filled in letter V. See, it's just like a V there. And let's see, I might have a little bit come down the middle. For this strawberry, I'm going to do like a circular area at the top. And then it's going to trickle down to the bottom here. I'm getting a little bit more water because mine is getting less soupy. All right. So this one I'm going to do another C again. Our light source is a little bit elusive, meaning that unlike the still life that we did on Tuesday, which had a very clear light source, this one doesn't. I'm going to paint across the middle there. So just to show you my C for the bottom. This one isn't going to have as much highlights because we're just looking at the strawberry itself, but the light is coming from the left. This one I'm going to do a little bit of a C. The great thing about watercolor is that generally it looks, I don't even know how to describe it. It looks realistic, but it's because it's watercolor. It's because the viewer, it's like our brains look at it and recognize, oh, it's watercolor. It's not supposed to be exact. I don't know exactly how that works, but it does. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and rinse off my brush. So all I did was get it wet just by dipping it in my cup and painting the bottom of the cup, like I've showed you, like when we got our brush wet in the first place, and then I just wiped the water there. All right, so now we're going to make some green. All right, let me just take a sip of water here. All right. So we're going to mix our mid-tone leaf color first, which is going to be our cadmium yellow, which we already have some, and our blue. My blue, I still have some here. Let's see. I don't actually know which blue this is, so I need to get it wet first. This is not the right blue. So this was my warmer blue, which is the phthalo. I want the ultramarine. So I'm going to have to put a little bit of this here. This color here is a dark blue that we mixed, and I do not want to use that color this time, so I'm not going to get it wet. So I'm going to mix a new color here. I'm going to bring a little bit of my ultramarine blue, and I want to show you guys the difference between these, the cool and the warm blue. Because temperature is a really interesting thing. So you can see that these are two completely different temperatures. This one's warm, this one's cool. This one, this more like aqua kind of cerulean blue is what we would call that, cerulean. That has a little bit more green in it. This blue, the ultramarine, it's what would be called indigo. So this has more of a purple in it. So that's, the more purple is a cooler blue, the more green is a warmer blue. So that is that. So we're not going to be using, I don't think I'm going to be using the warmer blue. I think we're using all of the cool blue. So what I'm going to do is pick up some of this with my brush and bring it to the middle here. So I'm just wiping my brush, touching the paint directly, and bringing it to the middle. Now, to make a color light or dark, you really just have to add water. Because, like, when I say light or dark, I mean the value of it. So the hue, which is the color name, I always remember that, like, hue is a male name. So hue is the color name, meaning that if it's cerulean blue or cadmium yellow or phthalo crimson, or say you mix something together and you get aquamarine or lavender, those are all hue names. So those are the names of the color. The shade or the value is how light or dark those hues are. So if you have a light shade of cerulean blue, it would be, it's just a lighter version of this. So this is our cerulean blue. It's just a lighter version of that. So all you have to do to get that is add water. Now, with acrylic paints, you have to add something else. You would have to add, like, white, probably would be the case. Same thing, but going darker, you add the brown, which is why we have those colors generally. However, our paper is white, and so with watercolor, we just use the paper as the white. Or you can lighten it with watercolor. So I'm going to just put a couple drops of pure water, and then I'm going to pick up some yellow. And I'm putting the yellow, I'm not touching directly to the blue because I want to keep putting my brush back in the yellow without getting it dirty. So I'm not touching the blue just yet. I'm putting about equal amounts. So I'm trying to get it so it looks like about the same amount as the blue. Okay. I can probably get a little bit more, but remember I added water to this blue. So it looks like there's more there than there actually is. So I'm going to pick up a little bit more water, add to my yellow. Now I'm going to mix these two colors together. Let's see what we get. All right, I think I can actually go a little lighter than this. No, actually, you know what? I like that color. So I'm not going to add any more yellow. We've got the hue that we want. Now, like I said before, what do we do in watercolor when we want to lighten the value? We add water. So I'm just going to add some pure water in here. So all I do is just, I get some water on my brush and then just kind of brush it. This has a well that goes down. I just brush it on the wall of that well. All right, I'm going to get it even lighter, just a little bit more. You can see why we don't always need the palette knife, but I like to have it handy, so that's why I grabbed it earlier. Okay, so I'm going to do a test. I'm going to paint one of the leaves in the middle that I know for a fact is going to be a dark green. That way, if for some reason this is too dark, it's okay. We can add water before we put it on one of the light colors. So this here is a dark green. Well, looks like it's actually pretty light. I can barely see that. So all we have to do, add a little bit more to that. So we'll go ahead and paint this color on all of our leaves. And what we're going to do to make our dark color, remember how I said watercolor is additive, we're just going to add more of our green color after it's dried, and that will actually make the color darker green. You can always add too, if you want it to darken up quickly, add like a little bit more of the blue or add brown. All right, so what we're going to do, we're painting all of our leaves green. We're painting the strawberry leaves green. Now, if you're looking at the reference photo, I'm making my green a little bit more of like an olive color than the green in the picture. And that is just an artistic choice. I think it looks more strawberry-like, personally. So you can do the same thing. I want to remind everyone that you're always welcome to ask questions in chat. I do not mind off-topic chat if you want to ask questions about other things. I just like to have people gathering around thinking about art. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I try to look at my chat window every once in a while and see if anybody's asked any questions. Now, the thing about watercolor is it actually dries relatively fast, at least in the terms of it might be a little damp, but it's not wet anymore. However, we are going to be doing some wet-on-wet painting today. Any of you that have done Bob Ross are familiar with wet-on-wet painting with oil, which was kind of his signature. But there's like a little part missing there. Get that in there. Watercolor, of course, makes more sense to be wet on wet because it is. And that's why he was such a great painter, because he was doing something that really wasn't done very often. So I always just use my finger. Oh, and that is not dry. But if you use your finger, watercolor is not toxic. Now, I forgot to mention, if you are using this, I really would prefer if you mix the yellow and the blue and not use the green that's pre-made. You can. However, I think you're going to get a more satisfying result if you use that. The lid, if you have like a lid like this on yours, on your paints, this is a well, this is a palette. So you can actually mix your color out here. So you can get your water, you can get your color. So I'll show you while I'm waiting for this to dry. So I'm getting it wet by making a soup. And I'm going to get my blue wet by making a soup. Oh. Well, yours is going to be a little bit different color if you're using Crayola, because this is a very warm blue. But it is what it is. So, okay, so I'm going to pick up some of my blue and bring it to the middle, just like we did. You don't actually need all that much, because a little bit goes a long way. Wash your brush. Do the same thing. You put it next to it and try to put the exact same amount. Okay, and then I'm going to use a little water. I'm going to mix the two together. Now you can see this is a different color green from what I have. Actually, you might not be able to see that. Let me see if I hold it up to there. This is a very aqua green, but that's because my blue is different. So see if I'm just going to paint a little bit of this on one of my strawberries. Look at the difference in that green. See how that green right there? It's a very bluish green. And then that's because this color here already has some green in it. Remember, I told you that the lighter, the warmer blue has green in it. So that's why we get this more Kelly green. All right. I'm going to get a paper towel and clean this. I'm not going to be using this color, and you should always keep, unless you were planning on doing this again, you should always keep your everything clean. Oops, and I'm getting blue everywhere. Okay. So that's how you do that. Oh, thank you. Welcome, Fire Mage. Thank you for joining. What's cool too about watercolor is by the time you end up, we'll see what this looks like in the end, but you end up getting all these really cool like tie-dye looking colors. in your napkins, your paper towels. Okay. So I'm going to wipe this here because I'm just going to blend it. This one strawberry is just going to have darker. All right, so I'm touching again. I'm touching the paper, and it seems pretty dry. So I'm going to pick up some more of this dark color, and this time I'm only going to go over some of the leaves. I'll do the two middle ones and like the underside of some of the leaves, because this is our shadow color. So I'm not painting the entire leaf with this color. So this one I might do just a little bit here to show that the leaf is facing away from the light source, facing that way. So, Fire Mage, since you're just joining us, the reason that they're yellow so far is because we were laying down our foundation color, which was yellow. Watercolors are additive, and so eventually that part of the strawberry is going to be kind of a reddish orange. So we put the yellow down first, and what we're doing is we're going to be adding the red on top of that, which will mix to form the orange. So that's why we did yellow first. In watercolor, you kind of work light to dark. That was a really good question. So eventually they won't be yellow. I think that leaf was still a little wet from where I did that other color. So I'm just coming in and putting my darker color kind of on the underneath of the leaves. Sometimes if the leaf is facing up away from us, the whole leaf will be the dark green. So yeah, so what will happen is that if you look at the picture, right. Yep, maybe they're not fully ripe. Part of it too, though, is because our light source is shining from this side, which means that this side is going to be kind of a lighter yellowish red or orange, because that the light is shining on it. So light can make something look like a different color, because of course color is light. That's a good question. So if you think about it, if you know about like light, if you see something that's blue, and that's because blue is the one color that light is not filtering in some way. That's pretty funny. And octopi actually have what are they called? Chromatophore or chromatophores or something. They have something that allows them to change their color and even the look of their texture. Octopi are very cool creatures. But so when you look at something that's blue, what you're really seeing is all of the other colors have either filtered or reflected out, and you're seeing what's left, which is blue. Blue light is the one light that kind of sticks. So depending on light or dark, like if it's dark outside, then that changes how light looks. Do they? I did not know that. I think I read somewhere that they had more than one heart, but I didn't know how many. That's really interesting. Where are they? Are they in the main part of their body, or? He said that octopi have 3 hearts. All right, so I'm going to let this dry a little bit. Let me see. I want to come back into this one. Let me see if it's still wet. It's still a little wet. I guess I'll have to wait a little bit. Oh, well, that's cool. He said he wasn't sure, that he just knew they had 3. That's cool. I like learning facts like that. And octopi are really cool. They're kind of they're one of my spirit animals. So you think I know about the heart thing, right? They're super cool. Very, very smart. I have a theory that they're actually smarter than humans, depending on what you consider intelligence. Like the fact that they're in the ocean, you know, kind of prohibits them from doing some of the things that we've done, but they can do cool things that we can't, like taking on the color / pattern look of something that it's near. How awesome is that? I mean, that's very smart, I would say. I mean, because what is our intelligence if not our innate abilities to do things, you know? So we're letting this dry, and I'm talking about octopi while we're letting it dry. And I'm drinking my cranberry Earl Grey tea. It's a little bitter, and I think it's because it didn't actually steep correctly. Earl Grey is black tea, and black tea should be steeped either at or near boiling. So, poison dart frogs. You like poison dart frogs? Oh, because of their colors. Yeah, they're pretty cool. I mean, I don't want to touch one, but they're cool. Because isn't like their skin and everything poisonous? They secrete the venom, I guess. Well, no. I guess it would be poison because you're ingesting it. That was something that used to always slip me up, is the difference between poison and venom. So poison you take into your body. Venom is injected into your body. I think that's how that works. Yeah, definitely not safe. But I mean, hey, that's their superpower, right? You know, their superpower is keeping you away. Or whatever it is that's trying to get them and eat them. All right, so let's see. I'm going to just lightly... Nope, it's still wet. Well, I tell you what. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to let this stuff dry, and we're going to start mixing our strawberry color. Okay. So let's go ahead. We're going to make... I do not have any red in my palette, so we're going to make some strawberry color. It says keeps them alive most of the time because animals make adaptations so they can eat them. Well, yeah. I'm sure there definitely are some animals that could eat that and be okay. But, you know, the poison dart frog will continue developing ways to protect itself because that's how evolution works. All right, so I put a very tiny bit of red. You don't need very much. I'm going to get the water in there. And again, you don't have to touch the paint directly. You just have to agitate the water. And it will start mixing the red in there. Now this is a very pink red. It's called phthalo crimson. It's a very pinkish red. That's cool. So the more pink a red is, the cooler it is. That means it has more purple in it. Notice the more purple in the blue is the warmer. The more purple in the red is the cooler. I just said that wrong. The more purple in the blue is the cooler. The more purple in the red is the cooler as well. So the more purple in something, the cooler it is. The more yellow in something, the warmer it is. Hopefully I didn't just confuse you guys. I did that last time we did a watercolor. I kept confusing warmer and cooler. I mean, I know what I'm talking about, but of course I'm not saying it out loud. One time you were at the beach and had a net near the shallow and you caught a pufferfish by accident. Oh, it hadn't blown up yet. Yeah, it wasn't protecting itself. Well, that's very cool. I don't think I've ever seen a... I'm trying to think if like at an aquarium I've seen a pufferfish. I don't know if I've ever seen a pufferfish live. Like I feel like I've only seen them in pictures or videos. But that's pretty cool. Fire Mage, you know a lot about animals. Are you an animal lover? I almost put my brush in my tea. That would not be good. Oh, so when it did blow up? Eventually? Yeah, I don't think they're very big. That's pretty cool. All right, so I'm going to take this straight red and I'm going to come in on the right side and see how pink that looks. I'm going to hold this up so you can see. Look how pink that looks there. You are one. That is true. We are animals. That is a very good point. I love animals too. They're pretty cool. So I'm painting right now. I'm just painting in the white area that I left from where I had put the yellow earlier. Thank you. It is a rather nice red. Thank you very much. Phthalo Crimson's a really pretty color. It's kind of a magenta, like a hot pink. So I'm just painting again, like I said. I'm going to get a little bit more water. Well, and once we start getting the, you're right, it does blend well. And once we start getting the warmer red in here, it's going to really blend. So, I lost my train of thought. That's okay. All right. So once we have those, we're going to let that dry a little bit. Oh, almost did the brush in the tea again. That would be a really big mistake. I do not recommend drinking watercolor tea. Okay, now we're going to mix in, we're going to make some, I'm just getting some water, some straight water in the middle here. And we're going to bring in some of our yellow. And some of our red. Then I'm going to do some more of our red. Oop, I picked up a lot of red there. So let me, I didn't mean to. So I'm going to pick up, now I'm just wiping this on the side. But I'm not putting nearly as much yellow in this one. I probably need more since I accidentally picked up actual paint. I didn't mean to do that. I meant to just get the water from the paint. Okay. So we have a warmer red. Now this red, we're going to come in and we're just going to paint kind of the middle outside areas. And this you can overlap a little bit with the yellow. Like you can let it go over the yellow. If you get in trouble with your reading teacher for basically nothing and your mom tells you to do something about it, what do you do? Well, what did you get in trouble for? Or this hypothetically, what did you get in trouble for? Usually, I would say, depending on what you got in trouble for, you were holding a paper clip and he said you were distracting and he sent you to another class. Well, so he said you were distracting for holding a paper clip. What were you doing with the paper clip? Because I feel like something must have been happening for him to say it was distracting, right? Not to say the teacher's always right or anything like that, because we mess up too, you know. But something must have been causing him to say that. I would say generally the best bet is to go talk to the teacher, right? So talk to your teacher and, you know, see what can maybe be done for future. Like in the future, like if maybe come up with a plan of how it could be handled in the future. Because, you know, teachers are humans too, right? I mean, they're people. And sometimes they make mistakes. I'm adding a little bit more yellow to this orange, by the way. So that it's a nice light orange. Just hold that up so you can see it. So yeah, this is much lighter orange. It was in your hands and you were fidgeting with it, but no one was getting distracted. Well, I mean, maybe he was getting distracted by it. Because sometimes, you know, the teachers, so when we're standing up in front of the classroom, we can see everything that you're doing. I remember in one of my classes, people would try to hold their phones, like they would try to hold it below the desk and they would look at their phone. And they would sit there and look at things, and the teacher can see you. I don't know if you guys know that, but whenever you're doing something, writing notes, passing notes, whatever, unless the teacher's back is to you, they can totally see everything that you're doing because they've got not only a perspective of looking at everybody, but they're standing up usually too, so they can see over you guys. So just keep in mind that if you're doing something with your hands, you know, I'm just going to sit here, you know, I mean, even though I'm not really doing anything and that doesn't seem like it should be distracting to anyone, if it's something that you're constantly doing and the teacher notices it out of the corner of their eye, that can be very distracting. I would say probably in the future, you know, and I would go talk to the teacher, maybe apologize and say you didn't really understand how that could be distracting before, but you've thought about it and maybe now you understand. Teachers are pretty cool, you know. Most of them are. And I would just say, you know, in the future, if the teacher says, hey, you know, please stop doing whatever it is you're doing because it's distracting, then just say, okay, sorry about that, you know. Yeah. Well, and sometimes that's all it takes. I can tell you, I get distracted really easily sometimes. I mean, earlier, I don't even remember what I was going to say, but I was going to say something and just completely lost it. So it happens. But thanks for asking me for my awesome teacher advice. All right, I'm going to pick up a little bit of red. I'm going to actually mix just a tiny bit of blue in here. He didn't tell you to stop. He just told you to leave. Well, and sometimes, you know, you mentioned that you got sent to the back of the class before. You know, sometimes teachers are going based off of past experiences. So I'm painting over this pink that we did, that dark pink. I mean, that light pink, sorry. I'm making it darker. I just added a little bit of blue to the red. But yeah, so he might have been going based off of a past experience, and that's why he said that. You know, that's why he didn't give you a chance, because he thought maybe there'd be argument. That's why I would go talk to him. I would go talk to your teacher and just have an actual conversation with him, because in that way he knows that you're trying, and maybe he'll give you a chance in the future rather than just sending you right away. All right, so I'm taking my darker reddish color. I made it even cooler by adding a little bit of my blue to it. And now I'm painting over that pink from before. Now I really want to start getting some of the wet on wet in here. So I'm adding more water and letting it be wet. Because I'm gonna come back in with that orangish red that we made while it's wet and start adding that in, so the colors will kind of blend together a little bit. This is the awesome thing about watercolor. Okay, so I'm going to pick up this orange. And it's going to start blending. So the thing about watercolor, you're welcome. The thing about watercolor is that when it dries to the edges, meaning that the darker part will go closer to the edges. So if you had two things next to each other and they both have edges, you'll see that. So you'll see dark marks that separate everything. But if you blend the colors together like we're doing, where everything is still wet, you don't have those. Instead, you just have a blend of color. So I'm trying to get this done while it's still wet. Now I'm going to come in with my light orange that I made and go right over that yellow while everything is still wet. Okay. So I'm not trying to rush, but I am trying to be quicker. Okay, so this part, I'm coming over with the orange. It's going to mix, and that's okay. I'm leaving a little bit of yellow at the top because we've got, as Fire Mage pointed out, these strawberries might not be entirely ripe. So we're going to leave little patches of yellow. In this particular one, I'm going to leave the yellow kind of as a circle shape. This strawberry here, I'm just going to paint over the whole thing. I'm not going to leave any yellow. Let's see. This strawberry is going to have a big old chunk of yellow for me. There. Now mine have started drying here, so I'm going to re-wet. Grab my orange. Now this one I'm going to put a little bit at the bottom. I'm going to leave my yellow at the bottom. So I'm going to actually take a little bit of yellow. There. Okay, and last but not least, I'm going to leave a little bit of yellow at the bottom of this one too. But see how everything blends so nicely here? And if for some reason you're having trouble with it blending, you can always just squiggle your brush. When I say squiggle, you just kind of go like this, back and forth, like that. You squiggle your brush right over the edges of your paint. So like here, I notice there's kind of a line. So see if I squiggle my brush over it, it smooths that line out just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm just using a clean brush, but up here, I'm just squiggling right over the line. Here, I'll show you with this one. I'll hold it a little closer. So if you look at this, you can see a very definitive yellow shape. But if I come in here and just squiggle my brush right over that line, see how that smoothed that out? And I'm wiping the yellow off. Look at that. Doesn't that look much nicer, and it blends a lot better? That's how you want to do it. So you just squiggle those lines, and you have to keep wiping the, all I do is I come over here to and I just wipe the paint directly on the paper towel just to get it off. So it doesn't take all the water off. Okay. So our strawberries are formed. Look at that. Guys, we've got strawberries. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to mix our shadow color, because these are still lifes, so they're not floating in space. We want to create a shadow. So let me just take a sip of tea. We're letting things dry a little bit. I kind of do want to add a little bit darker color in here. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to mix a little bit of my blue with my red. So look, I just gave myself a purple. And I'm going to come in and just put like kind of a little line here. Now if it's already dry, there's a way to fix that. We'll just get some pure water. Hopefully it's still wet. We'll get some pure water and we'll come over it. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the same thing we did before. I wipe my brush, and then I come over and just touch the edges of the color that I just put down. Wipe, touch the edges. Wipe, touch the edges. And you want to keep doing that because you're getting paint of a different color on your brush and you want it to blend. So you have to keep wiping it or it won't blend, because it'll just start turning whatever color you're getting on your brush. Okay. So all I did was mix a little bit of blue with my red. Like, look at all of the tones that we got here. All right, this is great, guys. So I'm cleaning off my brush because it's starting to get a little bit watered down from some of the colors. And okay, these were pretty blended over here. This, I'm really concerned. I think maybe, here's what I might do. I might come in here with a little bit of the orangish color. Just let that, it just feels a little too purple to me. All right, I think that's pretty good. Okay, shadow color, right? Didn't I talk about that? See, I get distracted too. All right. So, let's see. For the shadow, we're just going to be using the pure phthalo blue. So we are using the phthalo blue. That is our lighter blue. So if you have a set like the Crayola set, then you would just use your blue, straight blue. But let's really water it down because we do not want, I don't want any dark blue on there. So I'm just adding color to the side of the well. And then I'm agitating a little bit. Now I want to keep this where it's pretty clear. See, I can still see the paint down in the middle there. It's not completely soupy. So I want to keep it like that. And what we're going to do is first, we're going to paint, generally starting at the bottom, the strawberry shape, like the same shape as the right. We're just going to kind of copy that, but it's just going to come farther out. Don't forget your leaves here. So I'm going to hold this up because this has got to be really light, so I'm sure you guys can't see this very well. I'm going to hold it up for you to see. So see, I just came in here and made like the same shape as the strawberry, but just to the right of it. Okay. So we're going to do that for all of them. Now, this guy here, it doesn't have to be the exact shape. Oops, I almost grabbed the wrong blue. This one kind of curves out. I'm looking at the reference photo too for these. Don't forget your leaves. Your leaves have shadow too. This one here is like kind of at an angle. So the shadow will start almost underneath it and come out and curve up. And again, don't forget your leaves. All right, same here with the one at the bottom. It's a little bit at an angle, so we're just going to bring it down below the strawberry a little. And I'll hold this up here in just a little bit for you guys to see what my shadows look like so that you have some reference. Oh, I caught a little bit of my red in there, so I'm going to rinse my brush off and just wipe it on my napkin so that I didn't want any red. It's okay if it gets on there, but just wipe it so it doesn't go on any other strawberries. All right, last one. Okay, so I'm going to hold this up so you guys can see. You can see where my shadows are for the blueberries. I mean, the blueberries, the strawberries. Good Lord, guys. I said blueberries. I think it's been one of those days. My tea's gotten a little cold too. I'm going to need to get one of those warmers. It keeps it warm. I don't always drink my tea fast enough. Now, we're going to let this dry a little bit. Then we're going to actually darken our shadows a little. So while we're letting this dry, let's go ahead and agitate our water a little bit more so it's soupy. We want it to be the actual color of the paint, but we're just agitating it, so we're not actually touching the paint itself. All we're doing is moving our brush back and forth very quickly, and that pulls that color into the water. Like that. So see, now I can't see that middle anymore. That's what we want to do. So we're basically making that darker. So now that while we're waiting on that, we're going to get a little bit of water. We're going to add some highlights in our strawberries. Now, you think, well, Sarah, we already worked light to dark, and so we've got our highlights. That's what the yellow is, right? Yes, but we're going to create even more highlights, and that's possible to do by getting pure water. We're just going to paint some areas where we want the highlights to be. Then you take your paper towel and dab at them, and that creates some highlights. That's it. So I'm going to do a little bit of highlight here, kind of coming down, dab at it. Same thing. Here I've got some highlights right there in the front. And this is just to show the rounded shape of the strawberry. Let's see, this one, this whole area here is highlighted like that. Remember I said I wanted that giant circular shape. That one I might have to go in and touch up because I think I accidentally, let's see, the bottom, we wanted to get the bottom here. There we go. So you can see I maybe pulled up a little bit too much on some of these, but that's okay. This one I wanted to get the bottom. Let's see, there's a little bit of highlight here at the top too. When it's not completely dry and it's still a little wet, sometimes you pull up more than you intended to. All right, since I pulled up more than I intended to at these ones at the bottom, here's what I'm going to do. This one I kind of like the way it looks, but I am going to add just a little bit. I'm coming in and getting the orange red that we made, the one that's like a, not the orange, but the darker like orange red. And I'm just going to let it kind of do its thing. Let's see. Man, my stomach is growling because I haven't had dinner yet. Note to self, have dinner before teaching class. So I'm going to come in here with some of this orange that we made, the lighter orange. And then I'm going to darken just a little bit right here while it's still wet. That way we still get our highlight without it ruining the rest of the color. There we go. Okay, down here, let's see. I'm just going to blend it just a little. Remember, how do you blend with watercolor? You wipe off the color from the brush and just come right in at your edges. And if you have to add a little bit more water, you can. Okay. All right. I think this one's okay. And these ones up here were okay. This one I think could have a little bit more dark color. I mean, the thing is that when you're painting, you're always kind of adding in you're always kind of touching up, you know, adding in, touching up. There we go. Yeah, this is starting to look really good. Okay, I like it. So I might just feather the edges here. That's what that's called when you just do the squiggly back and forth. It's called feathering the edge. I'm going to feather the edges down there. Let the rest of this be highlight. And I'm going to feather over here too. Maybe just a little bit more of the reddish orange color. Okay. I think these are good. So now, wash your brush off. We're going to go back into those shadows. Those shadows should be pretty dry by now. And we're going to take that soupy color that we made, and we're going to come in right at the edge of the strawberry, like right at the edge. Okay. You can get a little bit up in your leaves, but you don't necessarily have to. Just the edge of the strawberry. Just really get some color up in there. So remember the other day when we were talking about the still life, I think I talked about this with the snowman too, when we did the snowman painting, that when you're closest to the object, your shadow is much, much darker than when you're farther from the object. It kind of fades out and becomes the color of your paper or whatever, ground, whatever the thing is the shadow's on. So we are all right. Now we're going to take a little bit of water and just touch at those edges. And we're blending it. So I'm going to do the next one so you can see it. So I'm going to get a little bit of water, wipe most of it off, most of it. So see how right now this is a dark line? We're going to come in right at the edges and just touch them. And I'm just squiggling my brush. This is just like we did with the rest of it. I'm squiggling my brush. Okay, get some water, wipe it off, like wipe off the sides here. You can see, I'm just wiping up the sides. And squiggle. Okay, water, wipe, squiggle. Squiggle right at the edge of the darkest part of the color there that you just laid down. Okay, water, wipe, and squiggle. Also known as feathering, if you want the correct term. Okay. Last time. Okay. Now, you may know that strawberries have little dots in them. Okay. So, we're going to have to do the dots, and some of the dots are going to be dark and some of them are going to be light. So, we've got to make that dark color. So, while the shadow's drying, we're going to make our dark color. So, it really is some of our red. And in fact, I need a little bit more of my red because I accidentally brought it over. So I'm going to put just a little bit more red there. Get that nice and watery, but not too watery. We are going to make a soup out of this. So this is, okay, so maybe a little bit more water. Okay, so I'm going to start agitating it. And this time I really want to get that red mix. So I'm just going to put my directly in the paint and get it nice and mixed. All right, so now I have a good red color. I'm going to wipe my, rinse my brush off. Okay, and you can wipe it. I'm going to pick up just a little bit of my blue. I'm using the ultramarine blue. I'm going to put some on the side here. So I'm just wiping. And then I'm going to mix it in. So this is giving me that dark color. I want it to be just slightly darker than that. So I'm going to get a little bit more blue. We're making it like a purplish, a reddish purple. Okay, so I'm going to hold this up so you can see. You see how dark that red is just by adding the blue. All right, but it's also very thick. So what we're going to do, I need this to be totally dry. So we're going to prepare the white spots. Now, if you do not have this, that's perfectly okay. I didn't tell you you were going to need this, but I am going to actually water down some acrylic paint. This is a little cheat. I've used this before to make stars when I've done a watercolor. I did a watercolor Milky Way, which we'll probably be doing it sometime this year. But this is one of my favorite paintings to do. But I actually used a watered down acrylic white to make my stars. It is a cheat, but it still counts. It's still good. So I'm going to actually put this over in a totally different place so that I can wash it out easily. You don't need very much paint, just a tiny bit. Now this I'm going to actually use the palette knife for, but I've got to get some water in here. So I'm just going to start adding water. And it's okay if your water's a slightly different color because my water's a little pink. You can't probably tell in that, but in the camera, but so I'm just adding water and making a pool. You can actually see the pink water there, but see, I'm making a pool so that it's going to be nice and watery. So I'm just getting water on my brush, taking it and just wiping it on the side there. Okay, once I've got a pretty good pool going, I'm going to take my palette knife and I'm going to mix it all together. So you just mix, mix, mix. So you've got like a nice watery white color. Now, if you do not have white acrylic paint, and that's okay if you don't, I'll show you a different method, and that's going to be similar to what we did with our highlights. You're going to take your brush and you're going to make really little dots with water, and then you'll be taking your napkin and drying those up. But we have to wait until the strawberries are 100% dry to do that. So we're giving it lots of time to do that. So I'm just making sure I don't have any pure paint. I want it to be completely soupy. I do not want any acrylic paint left over. So make sure it's really, really well mixed. Okay. All right. So let's see how it's doing dry-wise. It's still a little damp in places. We need this to be pretty dry for what we're about to do. So we're just going to take a little break. But class is almost over, guys. We're doing really great today. Class is almost over. I do see some areas in this shadow that are just a little bit, I'm going to have to get some water, where I'm seeing too much of a stark line between the dark part and the light part. So all I'm doing is I got a little bit of water on my brush and I'm just feathering that edge. It's okay if you leave it like that though, because having that choppy look sometimes is very effective. So it's not a problem to necessarily do that. All right. Let's see if any of my strawberries are dry so we can go ahead and start. Okay. So I think this one's the main one that's still wet, that very first strawberry. So we're going to start down here. All right. So remember, we have dark spots and we have light spots. We're going to start with the dark spots. Okay. So you're going to take this dark red color. You're just going to put the tip of your brush in it. Hardly anything is on the brush. That's just the tip of the brush. And you're going to very lightly touch the strawberry in different places, giving it dots. I will hold this up so you can see this closer. So you can see the dots there. And only do it in the darker part. There. All right. So here we only have a few dots like over at the top right. Because only in the shadow would you see those dark dots. So kind of where we did that darker color earlier, that's where we're going to do the dots. And you can cluster the dots together so that they don't necessarily look like dots. That's fine too. I'm going to save this one for last since it's not completely dry. All right. Get those dark dots in there. This one is kind of all down at the bottom underneath of the strawberry. This one, the dots kind of go right up the side here. And then this very last one, they're sort of clustered down at the bottom. All right. Now, these strawberries here, if you look at the reference photo, they're like a little bit more kind of, the dots are kind of muddied, whereas, well, I guess the dots are muddied on all of them in the reference photo. So we're going to let these dry, and then we're going to do a little bit of blending over them, which is going to make them kind of recede in the background. Let's go ahead. I don't want to add the white just yet because the white is going to be the very last thing that we do. So let's just take one more little break and then this will be our last one. We are almost done. You can always with watercolor, it's very similar to acrylic. You can use a hair dryer if you need to dry something faster. I don't like doing that, and the reason why I don't like doing that with watercolor, let's say that, because acrylic paint I use it. The reason I don't like doing it with watercolor as much is because watercolor has the way that it dries is kind of what makes it cool. So remember how I said that it dries to the edges? Well, if you don't let it dry to the edges because you dry it so quickly, then you don't get the same effect that if you let it dry naturally. So I have a tendency to let my watercolors dry naturally, and that's why I don't always use the hair dryer. Because hair dryer just dries it too quickly for it to do anything cool. You know, some of the cool effects you get. I'm going to come in with this blue color very lightly right at the edge of the strawberry. Just give it a stark shadow. I haven't decided whether I want to blend this yet or not. We'll see. This one I might just put down at the bottom. And I'm just trying to use my brush as lightly as possible. That way I get the smallest point. So while I'm doing this, I'll go ahead and mention to everyone, you probably noticed, I explained it at the beginning, but my Discord channel is called ArtShare, is down at the bottom left of the screen. That is where I put the reference photos so that you can see what we're painting or drawing for the day. But also it's where you can upload, if you have been following along, you can upload your picture and we can do a critique of it, because I like to critique my work at the very end. I think it's very beneficial for motivation and confidence, because while I am teaching art, to me, I could be teaching anything. The point for me teaching is about confidence and like giving the student or the learner confidence and motivation to want to learn more. And so we happen to be learning art, but really this could be any subject for me. You know, I just like to teach because I really want everybody to feel like they're good at something. And you can be good at this. This is why I teach this, because art is, a lot of people consider it very elusive, like it's something they cannot be good at. And that's just not true. This is just a skill you don't have yet. That's all it is. So I'm just coming in and feathering that dark blue, because I did decide after all I didn't want it to be such a harsh line. So I'm just feathering the edge of it. And since I didn't even put any water on my brush, so it's really not picking up very much paint. This one I might have to. This one dried on me. Okay, now I'm going to take a little bit of my dark red color, and I'm just going to put it in the middle because I just need to water it down some. Okay, so I'm just going to pick up a little bit of that and just go right over those dots we made earlier. And what that does is it kind of blends them in the background. I don't want to paint too much because I don't want the dots to completely go away. But I just ran that color over the dots just so you can see. So you can still see the dots. They're just like a little bit more faint. All right. Now for the white. So completely wash and dry your brush. So I've got my white right here. I'm going to make sure that my brush is in a very fine point, and I'm going to put just the tip of it in there so you can see there's hardly anything on my brush. Just the tip of it. And we are going to come in and put our spots. Now these spots we are not going to blend away. You can put in some little highlights if you want. So they won't, those won't be spot shaped. Now when I'm doing little dots like this, I hold my pinky finger against my paper so that I have really good balance with my brush so that I can manage my pressure. This is a technique that some people use for putting on makeup when you have to do really small lines like around your eyes and things like that. Okay. So when I'm done with this strawberry, I'm going to hold this up so that you can see what it looks like. I'm going to do a bigger spot of white down here. I feel about that. I'm gonna blend that. All right, so I'm gonna hold this up so you can see it. So if you can tell, let me turn off my light here. Hang on. Okay, let's see if that helps. So you can see all the little white spots that I did on there. It's very lightly. And that is really hard to see, but hopefully you guys can see that. And I did some larger areas of white. Okay. So let's go to the next one. I've got some spots down here. And these are going to be a little closer together because they're down along the edge. So they're going away from our eye. I'm really hoping that some of you guys followed me today because I would love to see how this turned out. This is one of the easier watercolors that I've ever done. So I hope that if you're interested in watercolor, you'd try this one out because this really is. I mean, I've done some landscapes and stuff. Landscapes, I feel like they look easy, but they're kind of complicated. But this is actually pretty nice. So I hope you try this out. If you are watching this on YouTube, I encourage you to also join my Discord channel. That is for everybody, not just my Twitch followers. And share this if you share your paintings or drawings later. You can also share drawings or paintings of something that you just did on your own. I like all kinds of art. But I can give you personal feedback if you want, or if you just want to share just for everybody to see. The whole point is to share your artwork with the group. We never ridicule. We never make fun. It's a very supportive atmosphere. I try to give as supportive feedback as I can. Okay, and so I'm just finishing up lots of little dots, lots of little dots. Sorry, I've run out of things to talk about a little bit, which, if you know me, is kind of amazing. I hardly ever run out of things to talk about. All right. Getting closer, guys. So I'm doing little dots. My little white seed dots. And the reason these look like this is because of the way the light is highlighting them. Okay, now we've got dots on the left. So let's go ahead and get those down. And we've got some dots at the very bottom, down where we did our highlight. Then we have some dots kind of on top of some of the darker dots we have. So if you can still see any of your darker dots, you can go ahead and put some white spots there on some of them. And let's see, we've got kind of a highlight in the middle here. Some more dots here. Let's see, were there any highlights? I think there were some other highlights I missed. Let's, over here, let's do some white here. So this is a cheetah for some reason. You had to come back and do some, where you accidentally painted over something. You could do this. I don't recommend it because it's not going to look as natural and good as if you just left the white there. But you could always use it as a fix, and that is to use acrylic paint. I didn't mean to put that there, so I'm going to just try to catch it with my, there we go, with my paper towel before it dries. Get some of that orange color and just come in the middle here. I think that's pretty good. Now, let's see. Looking to see what else can be. I want to do a little bit more green in the leaves. I'm not totally satisfied with that. So I washed my brush completely after I did the white. I'm going to pick up some more green. Now that it's completely dry, I'm going to come in and put some darker stuff in there. I really want to get some more some more shadows on the leaves. Okay. I meant to have some, I'm starting to get a little distracted because I'm hungry, but I meant to have some pumpkin seeds on hand because those are a really great snack. So some of you may or may not know, I'm also a personal trainer in addition to being an artist, and I'm really, really into nutrition. Like that's kind of a thing that I like. It's like a hobby. Is learning about all different kinds of nutrition. So anyway, pumpkin seeds have a lot of iron in them. In fact, I believe they have more iron even than spinach. Seeds in general are just packed with nutrients. So I highly recommend, if you need like a quick snack, check out some different seeds. And the way I use mine, I take raw pumpkin seeds and then I roast mine in the oven. I just roast them. It's just about 5 minutes on, you know, a low temperature, 200, something like that. And you don't have to turn them or anything. I sometimes lightly salt mine, but you don't have to put anything on them. They're actually quite delicious without needing to add anything. All right. I'm getting down to the last of my green paint, so I want to use it up, but I want to be careful because I don't want to have to make more. So I'm hitting my bigger areas first. All right. I'm going to call this done. I like it. I'm very happy with it. So I just want to show you, we talked earlier, but look at this. Look how pretty that is. It's like all different colors there. So sometimes when you're really doing a big watercolor, like when you're doing landscapes and stuff like that, it can really look tie-dye. The whole thing can. So, okay. So we are going to first sign. So I'm going to get my pencil again. You always sign a watercolor in pencil. That's tradition. That's first and foremost. We'll get that signed. Now we're going to do a little critique. And I think the critique is especially important. So that's why I encourage you to upload your photos to ArtShare, because we should talk about them together. And if you go out there, you'll see that I've already done critiques for other students that have been following my classes. So you'll see the kind of feedback I give. I try to give feedback that will make it easier for you to improve, because that's why you're here, right? Is to get better at art. So I try to give really good feedback for that. Okay, so the way I run my critiques is we don't ever badmouth the art. We don't ever say, oh, this is terrible, or this looks bad, or things like that, because that's not really effective. It doesn't help you grow any. Similarly, we're not going to say, oh, this is really great, I love it, it's beautiful. Those kinds of things aren't helpful either. We want constructive feedback, which means things that tell us what to keep doing, what to stop doing, what to change the way we're doing it, what we can add. That type of feedback is better. So the first thing I like to do is I like to talk about what I think is really effective. You know, what were we going for? Well, we wanted our strawberries to look realistic, relatively realistic, right? Because it is watercolor, so it's always going to look a little bit impressionistic, meaning that if you stand far away, it looks like a strawberry. If you get too close to it, you start realizing that things aren't, it doesn't look exactly like a strawberry close up. So first of all, I think that my shadows are very effective. You know, when I went back in and added that dark area right underneath, I think that really popped the strawberry, made it jump up off the page. And I think that it really added to the overall composition of the strawberry. It really made it seem 3D, which is what we're going for. And that's the whole purpose of doing a still life, is to really work on our 3D skills. So I like that. Let's see. What's not as effective is really my leaves, actually. And even though I just went back in and did them, I just feel like, I'm not sure. I don't know exactly how I feel about the leaves. The leaves, I feel like maybe they need to be a little bit more blended. Like, let's say, okay, if I put a little bit of water on my brush and I come in here in this dark area and I blend this, I'm going to see if this like makes me feel any better about this situation. So I'm feathering the edge like I showed you guys to do. No, it's not making me feel any better about it. So I would say the leaves, I think for next time, what I might do differently is when I draw them, I might lightly sketch my shadow areas, because I think that will make it easier for me to figure out where to put the darker green and where to keep going, instead of letting it just be kind of haphazard, like wherever I lay it down. So I think that's what I'll do to help fix that next time. So my main feedback is that my shadows are very effective, and that the shadow of the strawberry, I think the dots are pretty effective, like especially the darker ones. And I think that my leaves, I just need to work on next time by lightly sketching in where I want my shadows to go. So that's my feedback. If anybody has, I'm going to go over and check Discord, but if anybody has joined the server and added their drawings, or rather their watercolors, I would love to see them. So it looks like nobody has, and so that's fine. Anytime you want to add is great, because I get notifications every time somebody puts something out there, so that I can go out there and look and see what's been posted. So even if you watch this YouTube video, 2 weeks from now, and you want to post your painting, please do, and feel free to ask for critique. I ask that when you post, you tell me the one thing that you think is effective and the one thing you think is not working as well, and that will give me a jumping off point to help you develop your painting or drawing or whatever it is that you're working on. So thank you very much for joining me. I will be streaming next Tuesday. We are going to be doing, I'm very excited about this, we're going to be doing anime faces. So I'm going to help you learn how to draw basic anime characters. And we'll be doing both a male and a female character. And I am going to let you decide what type of facial features to put, because with anime, everything is custom based on what you want. So you'll be able to completely customize your character, meaning yours is not going to look anything like mine. So I really encourage you to come. That will be at 2 p.m. Eastern next Tuesday, which is the 11th. And I look forward to seeing you then. So thank you for joining me, and have a wonderful weekend.